All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Muslim Bitcoiner podcast. I'm your host, Abdullah, and today, before we get started, I just want to do a quick shout out to Fountain.fm. You can listen to podcasts on Fountain and actually earn sats, and you can also support other podcasts by paying sats to the listeners that you enjoy. So I highly recommend checking out Fountain.fm, especially if you want to listen to some of the episodes on this podcast. Check out Fountain.fm, or you can download the Fountain app off of the Apple Store or the Play Store. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we'll be interviewing Bam, who is Bitcoin pleb on Twitter, and he mainly specializes in Bitcoin education is in Arabic. So Bam, welcome to the show.
Hey man, how's it going?
It's pretty good, man. If you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Bitcoin and how you started your YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I'm from Syria and I lived in the UAE most of my life in Abu Dhabi, and I grew up there. I loved it. So I studied in the UAE and I went to Turkey to continue my studies in engineering, and I graduated in 2016. And I saw Bitcoin as the thing that I want to study for my entire life, because I think that it's the most sophisticated system that I've ever encountered. And I studied a lot of systems, whether it's propulsion systems like, rockets or ships. I went into marine engineering and boilers and power plants and nuclear power plants and all of that stuff. But just the most fascinating system that I've ever encountered was Bitcoin. And so I decided to dedicate my life to studying it. And I've been doing that for like maybe 8 years. I don't know. Yeah, but
Wow.
it's so complicated. It's not an easy thing to study. So instead of going for a master's degree or a PhD or something, I was like, I'm gonna dedicate my entire academic life to Bitcoin. And at first it wasn't just Bitcoin, it was like blockchain technology, of course, and all of that, DeFi and Ethereum and all of that BS. But then I figured like, wow, it's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most interesting project.
If you don't mind me asking, how long did it take you to figure out that like a lot of the stuff in crypto is just crap? Like how
Yeah.
far along in your journey did it take?
Yeah, it took a while. So I started reading about Bitcoin in 2013, and
Oh wow.
I didn't understand it at first because I wanted to receive money, but I didn't have a bank account. So I just started researching about some payment methods, and I couldn't find any except Bitcoin. And Bitcoin doesn't require any KYC or anything, but I couldn't understanding it was based on cryptography and math, and I just couldn't fathom like the whole thing. So I after maybe 2 years, my friend asked me again to buy something off the internet using Bitcoin. He knows that I'm good at internet stuff and torrents and like all of these open source projects. And so I was like, okay, let me try. Maybe it's getting easier now, because just let me backtrack, because maybe a year before I heard about the Mt. Gox hack, and I thought that Bitcoin was over. Bitcoin is dead. And I was like, okay, thank God I didn't buy into that and didn't buy any Bitcoin. And so when I saw it again, when he told me about it, I was like, okay, I need to put more time into it and really just use it. I wasn't interested in making money out of it or something. I didn't know that. I did not think at all that it was going to go to thousands and stuff. So I downloaded a wallet. I went to local Bitcoins. I communicated with someone, in my area to sell me some. And I used the wallet for the first time. It was Electrum, and it felt so pure. It felt, because of the user interface, it's so simple. There was no company behind it. Like I could tell that there is no. It's just like simple software, kind of like torrents and very primitive programs. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's like a start of something, and it's seems powerful because nobody asked me for my identity, and I'm from Syria. So I was like, wow, okay, it's funny money in magic internet money, So I was like, okay, let me try to send a transaction. And it was just like, okay, copy this address and then put it here, put the amount, and voila, it just went to another continent. So I was very impressed because I actually used it, but I couldn't understand it still. Like, imagine, like, I couldn't understand what is it. And at that point, I should have bought some, but I didn't, and I left it. And I said, like, okay, that's an interesting project, but I have to study my things. I have to study engineering and stuff. So when I got back to it again in my last year in college in 2016, I wanted to do some kind of graduation project, capstone project, and I was like, okay, can we use energy as money? And can we like transact with energy units or power using batteries? Okay, I just had like this weird idea. And I was like, energy is accepted everywhere. And imagine if you have like very efficient batteries that you can connect to every machine, and then I can pay you with, so I was like, okay, who did that? Did anybody like think of that before? And I started searching, and I see like Satoshi Nakamoto again. I'm like, what is that? Okay, Satoshi, okay, proof of work. And then I was like, oh, Bitcoin again. I was like, okay, this time I'm going to spend like a lot. I'm going to spend my entire summer just like learning what is this thing. Okay. Like not, these analogies of what it can do, or maybe digital gold or something. No. What is it actually? Like the ledger, the blockchain, the mining, all of it. And so I was impressed that, decentralized, no one's in control, and Satoshi Nakamoto, like the amazing story of Satoshi Nakamoto. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. And this will change the entire game, the whole world. And I'm going to really spend a lot of time studying it. At the same time, I was observing all of the censorship happening on social media and on YouTube and everywhere, coming out of the left. And I was like, it's very dangerous. It's not only like culturally or politically, and even it's going to spill out to the entire society, this way of thinking. Like, if you don't agree with someone, then we're going to shut you down. So I was like, we need to find a technical solution for that. And Ethereum showed up saying, we have, Bitcoin is great, but we can have other decentralized applications. Right. I was like, great, amazing. I want to have like decentralized social media and decentralized protocols. And so I was like entirely focused. I kind of didn't leave Bitcoin entirely. I was focused on both at the same time, just simultaneously studying them. But with Ethereum, it was more like there was how can I explain it? It's like usability, like using this. It's not.
Yeah, it's
not like studying,
studying. Right. Like, I guess like Ethereum tries to market itself more than just money, and it's like a decentralized computer as they try to market it.
Yeah, and like I can use it. I can use Ethereum, doing applications and doing stuff with it. Okay, like maybe locking some tokens inside the protocol and then moving these tokens to another liquidity pool or something. But with Bitcoin, I can only send and receive. Okay, so with Bitcoin, I was like interested in the security aspect of it and the cryptography. It was amazing because I was like, this is the first time learning about cybersecurity. I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep studying Bitcoin in that context, and then study the programming and the decentralized applications, whatever that means, the smart contracts thing, to just figure out how I know how to build stuff. Okay, maybe I'm gonna build some kind of application on top of it.
Right.
I spent like 3 years trying to understand Ethereum and Bitcoin at the same time, and really focusing on Ethereum so much. And then I was like, this is all just, it feels like there are a lot of startups, and all of these startups every single one of them is centralized. no decentralized application. There is no decentralized application like Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was under the illusion that Ethereum was also decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it had less of a degree of decentralization than Bitcoin, but I didn't know just how centralized it was. I didn't understand it because I didn't care about the pre-mine. They always tell me, like Bitcoin Maximus, they used to tell me, like, there's a pre-mine, 70%. And I didn't understand, like, so what? I was like, okay, let them just fund this project so they can build it. And I don't care if it was pre-mined. And then I was like, okay, if it's not pre-mined, then it's not neutral. And then, and then you're going to switch also to proof of stake. And if philosophically, if you're talking about cryptocurrencies in general, what are they? It's just a ledger. There is no like magical stuff inside of like Bitcoin. There is just a ledger that is distributed everywhere, and there are rules to adding new lines to this ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to add new lines in Bitcoin, you have to spend energy, and you have to build your system, your energy system, and actually compete with other people. It's very hard. And in proof of stake, whoever has the largest amount of money inside of that ledger is the person who is most, statistically most likely to add lines to the ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very skewed and susceptible to corruption.
Yeah,
so
yeah, and I was just going to add to that. I think a lot of people that are interested in Ethereum and other cryptos don't bother taking into account, like in addition to the technical problems, there's also like economic problems and also like ethical problems. Like, like you were saying, most people, like when you first looked at the pre-mine, you were like, okay, so what? They're just going to fund themselves. But like really, if you dig deeper, I mean, if you're going to start a decentralized currency or money, that's a very unethical way to do it, where like you shut out the public from this initial distribution and you're going to say, all right, we're just going to give ourselves some so that we can just develop this and we will distribute the rest of the tokens later. I mean, even if you had benevolent intentions, that's still like a very unethical way of going about it, which is completely like opposite of the way that Satoshi started Bitcoin, where anyone could mine and anyone can participate, which kind of, led itself to be decentralized in that way. When you start from a very ethical base in how you start a currency, like naturally it's going to just end up being decentralized. It's not going to be controlled by like one person that's, figuring out like, all right, we're going to issue this economic policy. We're going to move to proof of stake. And that's kind of what happened to Ethereum and pretty much all these other cryptos. So.
Absolutely, man. And when it started, if you remember, like, Ethereum started as a world computer. And that's what they said. They didn't say it was money because Bitcoin is money. So this one is some kind of a platform that you can build applications on top of. So I was on board with that. It's great. As long as you're not because you're not competing with Bitcoin. And Andreas Antonopoulos, he was championing Ethereum and telling everyone that Ethereum and Bitcoin are very different. That was the narrative, but the narrative changed. That's the problem, is that the narrative changed dramatically, and they started treating the currency Ether not as a way to basically pay for the transaction fees of these decentralized applications, supposedly decentralized applications. No, Ether is commodity. They want it to be what do you call it, a monetary asset. Okay. And so now you're competing with Bitcoin directly, and you were competing, but you weren't saying that. You were just like kind of hand waving and saying, no, don't care about this stuff, it's just like something different than Bitcoin. But really it's not. And then I was like, okay, you have the EVM, okay, Ethereum virtual machine, which is great. Why does it need Ether? Why can't you do the same thing with Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is money, and you can pay the miners or pay the operators of this machine with Bitcoin. And, they're gonna give you 100 excuses for why that's the case. Because, Vitalik says, because you want it to be neutral, and you want the EVM community or the Ethereum community to be in control of this network and not other communities and other blockchains, so
Right.
it's just a silly
Yeah.
excuse to
Yeah,
get money.
and that also lends itself to being centralized when you just like, all right, only this community can develop on it, and like they're actively shutting out like whatever, other development that goes on. And even the fact that there's like a development team that issues a roadmap of like, how, the code is going to change, or like how the consensus rules are going to change. I mean, again, that goes back to like the technical problems that, and also the ethical problems that we see with other cryptos, is that even just by virtue of having a roadmap already lends itself to being unethical, because you're only allowing a certain group of people dictate the roadmap when other people can't decide. So that's a really neat thing about Bitcoin, is that, if there's like some kind of change, right? Like you have the freedom to dissent. You have the freedom of saying, no, I'm going to run my node, and, I'm not going to do these extra changes, even if you don't agree with like, whatever soft fork is taking place. You can just say, oh, I'm just going to run this node and I can opt out. And that's, I think, really, really powerful in how Bitcoin operates.
Yeah, I mean, the development culture around Bitcoin really encourages improving the network with soft forks instead of hard forks. Even soft forks are very hard to deploy, but
Right.
hard forks just disenfranchise other users who don't want to update. And that's very important when we discuss, like, the Muslim community and the Arabic community everywhere in the world, who might not share the same values that Vitalik has, or whatever developer is responsible, for developing this monetary protocol, because they live in Europe or they live in the United States, and they have very different priorities and values. Maybe you value sound money, while maybe they value sound money while you value censorship resistance or something. And so you need to have a vote, to have a say if you live in these countries. But if you can barely run an Ethereum node,
Yeah.
and then being faced with a new hard fork that you are forced to follow, that's a problem. And so the narrative kept changing around, is it sound money? Is it a world computer? I was like, that's it. I'm leaving this clown show, and I'm just going to stick to Bitcoin, because, and also I'm not going to talk about like the applications being built on top, which are all centralized. Like none of them, even MakerDAO, none of them are decentralized, and they either depend on stable coins, or they have admin keys, or they're not efficient. They're not efficient at all. Like even if because they depend on tokens that are illiquid. And so you're forcing me, like you have an amazing application, but you're forcing me to buy your shitcoin that is illiquid, and I can't use it anywhere except for in your like program, in your like protocol or application or whatever. And that really sucks. Like imagine that we're living in this world that shitcoiners want us to live in, where if you want to buy milk or you want to go take a taxi, you need to have token for the taxi and a token for milk. And it's just so ridiculous. It's like, there's just money. It's a standard. We all agree on it. And the difference between Bitcoin, which is trying to homogenize money everywhere in the world, and shitcoins, which are trying to actually increase this division between all of the communities and tribes and peoples around the world.
Yeah, so it's like really, really inefficient if you think about it that way. Like we don't need more tokens for specific things. What we need is one token that we can use that's incorruptible and that nobody can change and nobody can dictate, of like how the economic policy of how those tokens are distributed. And yeah, I also find that kind of funny that, like, we don't need all of these tokens for all of these different things. That's what money does. Money is the most commonly used medium of exchange. Like that's what the technology of money. That technology of money was developed thousands of years ago. That like you're not innovating on when you make all of these other tokens for all of these specific use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to compare the monetary aspect of Ethereum versus the monetary aspect of Bitcoin, I mean, you've changed your monetary policy like I don't know how many times, and you're in control of the monetary policy. Like even if it's deflationary, even if it's like the supply is decreasing, you are in control of the mechanism that produces this policy. Okay, so you only have Bitcoin that is running autonomously, running like a machine without the control of anyone. And then you have the other stuff that are pretending to be money for certain communities, and they are trying to market themselves as the things that can do everything, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, not just money, it can be anything you want.
Yeah.
Okay, because you can attack it. You can say like, you're not money. And then they will say like, oh, we do smart contract stuff and application. And you tell them like, all your smart contracts are centralized and they are really inefficient. Oh, but we have like deflationary. It's like, what are you? What do you want to do? Okay, like just like give me your use case and let's discuss it. But there's nothing. There's just like there are just narratives that they are
Yeah.
repeating. And I didn't want to waste my time on that. But unfortunately, I seeing a lot of people falling into this trick, and I fell into it. And I feel that it's my responsibility to give my conclusion after like all of this journey, like all of this research that I did, and just tell people like, hey man, this is my conclusion, and if you think that I'm wrong, please give me your arguments, and I will change my mind if I find that there is actual use case value for these things, and not just like little value. I mean, because you're competing with Bitcoin, so you
Yeah.
need to come up with really like a huge thing. Like, don't say like we're kind of using it for CBDCs or banking or something like something silly. It's like this thing, private blockchains. Okay, no,
Hmm.
give me like a real use case. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So would you say that that's part of the reason why you kind of started your YouTube channel talking about Bitcoin education in Arabic?
actually, I didn't want to just talk about Bitcoin. I wanted to talk about all cryptocurrencies because I started teaching people about Bitcoin and other projects in 2018 and wasn't producing a lot of content. And then in 2020, when the lockdowns happened, there was this app, Clubhouse. Yeah, Clubhouse. So
Right.
yeah, I went on Clubhouse and I met with a lot of crypto and Bitcoin enthusiasts, and I started talking with them about this stuff. And I met with Suli, with Noor, with Arabic
Hmm.
Hodl, amazing people. But I wasn't aware of the maximalist arguments. I
Mm.
was only aware of Andreas Antonopoulos' arguments,
Hmm.
and narratives. So when I met them and I heard their side of the story, and I saw that they are very hostile towards altcoins and blockchain,
Right.
but at first I thought that, oh, they're doing it out of like tribalism or prejudice or something. But then I was like, okay, wow, no, they have like actual arguments that I need to check out and read and research, okay, before judging them. And by the way, we spent a lot of time like fighting, like really, yeah, on Clubhouse. I was like, no, you guys are, tribalistic, whatever, like, and
Yeah.
it was just like so silly, like, to think about it. But it's just like I was not humble enough. When they say like you need to be humble just to understand Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
you only figure it out once you see it. And really, after like listening to the experts and the Lightning developers, because I didn't know anything, not much about Lightning, when I listened to people discussing Lightning and how it works, I was like, oh, okay, like, okay, Bitcoin, there's a reason why it's just a store of value right now and not a medium of exchange, because there's a lot of constraints put on the main chain that are vital for decentralization and security, and you can do trustless transactions on layer 2 fast, cheap, using the Lightning Network that is not taking any shortcuts, that
Hmm.
is being built on solid foundation, and it's very efficient
Mm-hmm.
for the users that are using, for the small amount of users that are using it currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, how efficient is it? I downloaded a wallet. It was custodial wallet. Okay, it's very fast, but it's custodial. So I was like, okay, let me run a node and see what it's like to, play around with this new technology. So I was impressed. I was like, oh, okay, like liquidity and all of that stuff. I was like, this is big. This is a monetary protocol. It felt like it's not engineering anymore. It's more economic.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make economic decisions, okay, as a node runner. And I saw, at the same time, I was studying Bitcoin standard. I was reading it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is very impressive. It's not like a program. Like if you think about Bitcoin, if you just view it as a technical thing, you will not understand Bitcoin, man. Like you need to look at it in the eye of the engineer and the economist
Yep.
and the lawyer and the historian,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like
historian.
that. Yeah, I also want to say, like, yeah, exactly, just like you said, if you just look at Bitcoin as just like from a technical perspective, you're not really going to get like the actual full idea of what Bitcoin is. You have to approach it not just from a technical perspective, but also from like an economic perspective, and you also have to kind of take into account like how the history of money developed for you to understand like what Bitcoin is, like in the context of the history of money. And I feel like that whole all those suite of subjects are just completely lost on people that are like, like you can tell like a lot of these like Ethereum developers or whatever, like they're very knowledgeable on how Bitcoin works technically. But then like when you like ask them something like a very basic question about value or any kind of economic concept, you're like, wait, you don't understand like very basic principles of economics. Like no wonder why
Yeah.
you kind of moved on from Bitcoin to all these shit coins. But yeah, sorry, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so after I gathered like a lot of this knowledge, I was like, okay, I need to kind of go back to my senses and ask for forgiveness for spreading the shitcoin ethos to everyone. And I went to YouTube and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel focused on Bitcoin only. I deleted all of my previous videos about everything related to the other shit. It wasn't that much, but um, I started with producing content just for beginners on how to use Bitcoin, not what is Bitcoin so much, because people will know what is Bitcoin. People will translate it. It's so easy. It's like it's not easy, but it's available. And Saifuddin Ammous, he produced his book in Arabic, and maybe there's a lot of material on like what is it, but and maybe why also, but not how to use it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start filling this gap, and made a course, Bitcoin professional course. It's I took it from Andreas Antonopoulos and translated to Arabic. And I saw a lot of people who are technically minded, who really liked it, and we made like a group on Telegram. We gathered all the brain power, and we started saying like, okay, what can we do together? Maybe we can run lightning nodes and connect them with each other and experiment with coin joining, Sparrow, all of hardware wallets, maybe mining, anything. And so the community was great, was amazing. I love each and every one of them because they are super smart, and I've never met any any Middle Eastern who is not only smart but open-minded and progressive and truthful, like the ones I saw in our community. And I'm sorry, man. Like if you have like this community, our community is way better. Like I can tell, just come see it. Come to ArcNet on Telegram if you're Arab, if you're from the Middle East, and just meet with them, and you will find that these Arabs are better than your Arabic
And
friends.
and and
Just
and
kidding, but
and
yeah.
for anyone listening, if you do want Bitcoin education in Arabic, I will put a link to BAM's YouTube channel as well as the Telegram group if you wanna get up to speed on that. So I guess it sounds like you've come from quite journey on your not just like through Bitcoin, but I guess like arriving at Bitcoin maximalism, which is like very different than the way I got into it, because I got into it actually very late because as I've mentioned before, I've my older brother is the one that kind of like started looking into Bitcoin 2013, and he had a very similar experience in how he kind of went into Ethereum and these other coins, and then he kind of pivoted back to like Bitcoin maximalism. So by the time I came and I was ready to kind of go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, all of that work was already done for me by people like you. So like I really appreciate like all you guys that have to like go into this all of this crypto nonsense to arrive at Bitcoin maximalism. So like when I started, I already knew, like he told me, do not shitcoin, just Bitcoin only. So like I was already focused and I had a laser focus from the beginning. So I'm really thankful for you guys that provide that. And just to also say, like, for the education that you provide, especially in Arabic, I find that extremely useful. I know, some Bitcoin plebs complain about like there's just too much Bitcoin content out there, but like to me, like it might be true in certain aspects, but like there's huge gaps that are still like waiting to be filled as far as like trying to talk about Bitcoin, like you are among Arabs. Like there are Bitcoin educational material that talk about Bitcoin, but maybe not so much about like using it. And that's really great that you're coming in to fill that void. And even also like that's kind of like one of the things that I've been trying to talk about is not just Bitcoin itself, but I guess Bitcoin more from the Islamic perspective, because it's definitely one of those things that like kind of made me think. I knew nothing about like Islamic finance or Islamic economics, but I didn't start learning about those things until I found out about Bitcoin. And wanted to ask you, what do you think is kind of like the biggest impediment or the biggest obstacle for Arabs that are learning about Bitcoin? Like, what do you think is like the number one FUD that you encounter a lot?
It's not fun, but you have to put yourself in their shoes. So they don't have large incomes, and so we need first to separate like the Gulf states, the rich Arabic states like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and stuff, and then Lebanon and Palestine and Syria and Egypt and all of these countries. So on one hand, you have people who have enough money to live their lives in prosperous way, I guess, in a somewhat secure way. Okay, they're not too worried about like what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, and then you have the other cohort of people, I guess, or other populations who are very vulnerable financially. And the financially vulnerable communities in the Middle East, they tend to shitcoin more often because they just are chasing quick profits. And surprisingly, also the people who are in Saudi Arabia and in Emirates, and they are also not necessarily shitcoining. They don't care about shitcoins, but they trade. They like to trade assets. They like to trade the S&P or the stock market or altcoins or Bitcoin or whatever, but they're not interested in investing that much, investing into the future. If they want to invest, they would buy real estate or gold, but mostly real estate. Okay. Some of them, obviously, there are exceptions, people who are into the stock market and bond market and all of that. But mostly it's just trading and shitcoining. Okay. And the shitcoiners are easy to confront and to just convince that Bitcoin is the real thing. But when it comes to traders, it's kind of hard. It's kind of like, why do you want me to stop trading and just hold Bitcoin that I don't know whether it's going up or down? Because I'm not convinced of not only like shitcoin. I don't believe in shitcoins. I don't even believe in Bitcoin. I don't believe in all of that stuff. There is just volatility in this market, and I want to trade the volatility. Okay. And then, well, how do you make them understand that they need to save in Bitcoin? So what I try to to do is say, hey, man, look, imagine that you have so many, you basically made profits during 1 year that is equivalent to your salary. And then each year, Binance is going to take 10 to 15% of this profit that you made from trading. Like after you drew your entire technical analysis stuff and Wyckoff and all of that jazz, Binance comes in and takes 15%, just like that. Okay, you would immediately change this exchange, go somewhere else. Okay, and I told them this is the Federal Reserve. That's what the Federal Reserve is doing to your money, because your money is pegged to the dollar and you can't escape. And maybe you're talented at trading, but if the money supply is expanding 15%, so you're losing 15%. And why? You can just trade and then save in Bitcoin. That message resonates more than just like not trade at all. Okay, because a lot of them they don't have full-time jobs and they want to work from home, and trading is something that is exciting, and you get to have a community and talk with people and scroll social media for news and stuff. So it's kind of exciting, much more exciting than a full-time job. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to tell them like, okay, just maybe give Bitcoin a chance because you are losing your trading profits. When it comes to shitcoins, it's not really the shitcoin part is very easy to dismantle. The blockchain thing is really hard because a lot of companies in the Middle East and a lot of companies in the West are funding marketing campaigns in the Middle East hysterically, like XRP, like Ripple. Specifically, I'm calling out Ripple. Okay, Ripple Labs. Okay, so you don't tell me like, oh, there's a difference between. It's so silly, like it's so stupid, man.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, and they're funding these marketing campaigns specifically targeting people in the Middle East, in the UAE and Kuwait and these Gulf states, and they're telling them that don't focus on Bitcoin. Blockchain is the real thing. Okay, so focus on blockchain, and blockchain is the revolution. And so I need to academically argue against blockchain all the time and tell them why, and confront PhDs in blockchain like that. PhDs, just like whole nother creature, man, like the PhD person.
Yeah. So wow, that's actually really interesting in that, when you're trying to, I guess, educate about Bitcoin, it seems like there's a mindset that you kind of have to change first before you kind of get them to see that, like, all right, what needs to happen is that you need to, one, figure out a way to like earn cash, or like, figure out a way to produce value for others. And then like with profits that you get from that, put them into Bitcoin. But like what you're saying is that, what a lot of people in the Middle East care about is just, some way to like make a quick buck. And they use kind of, like you said, as long as they find volatility, they want to make money off of that volatility, and they're just happy doing that. That's actually I've not actually considered it from that angle, because it's definitely a little more tricky to dismantle. But because, to me, it's like, right, if you don't have a full-time job, get a full-time job. And then once you, earn money from that full-time job, then just like save it into Bitcoin. And a lot of people that like say that like they're Bitcoiners, but they like to trade shitcoins on the side to make profit so that they can get more Bitcoin. But it's like, that's so risky. Like, why would you risk losing your money so that you can like trade short-term profits in crypto? And another thing I wanted to mention is that if you're trading crypto, if you're not one of the insiders, you're going to lose. Like that's the reason why people make money off of shitcoins, is because like they are the insiders. But if you're not one of the insiders, you're on the losing side of that. And that's one of the things I like to bring up. And like you said, also the blockchain thing. I've also noticed this among Middle Easterners, is that they're kind of still like, this is like a 2017 or 2018 thing where like, it's like, oh, it's blockchain, not Bitcoin. And, I've also noticed that, like, I know in Dubai, they have like a really big, like, blockchain summit or whatever, like a conference that they do every year. And like, if you like look at some of like had the misfortune of looking on the website for that, and like you see all of these like speakers, and it's just scam after scam after grift and like all of this useless stuff that's just meant to like, scam people basically. And yeah, I don't have like a ready-made solution or anything. And that's actually one of the FUDs that I've encountered is trying to debunk this blockchain thing. And it is tough for, going against like PhDs, right? Like it's hard because you spend all of your time debunking all of this stuff on blockchain, and it's hard to get people to see what the actual innovation of Bitcoin really is.
Yeah, I mean, I try to come up with analogies all the time. I would say that you have the human body that has a respiratory system, and you might think that you can't get rid of it because a human being would die. But that's not the most important part of the human body. Like these things can be true, like the two things that Bitcoin without blockchain cannot survive. That's true. Like they always say that. But at the same time, it's not the main thing in Bitcoin. Like all of the components of the system work together synergistically to produce this thing. So whether it's the human body that uses a lot of other systems, circular systems, the nervous system and respiratory, all of that biology stuff. So, if you combine all of them, you get the human body. And if you take one of them out, then it won't function. But that thing that you took out is not basic thing, So
Yeah.
now when it comes to convincing people about like why you need to save in Bitcoin, now you get into the gold argument. Like, okay, because people in the Middle East, they have been saving in gold for thousands of years. I don't know how many years. So it's deeply ingrained in our culture. And when you tell them to save in Bitcoin, it's like, what do you mean? It's just something that is digital and not material. You can't touch it. So it can't stay for like 10 years or 12 years. How can I be certain? And well, how can you be certain? Then if you want certainty, then you need to study the protocol kind of. Okay, you need to really put in the work to study it. If you don't, then you will always view it as something that is just quick to make profits or to trade.
Yeah.
So we struggle with these concepts all the time, and it's a really hard task to just like keep repeating these arguments. But then in our YouTube channel, we recorded like 100 videos that short and right on point. If somebody says anything, and a lot of tweets, we wrote a lot of threads and articles. So whenever they say anything about a certain FUD argument, we would just like copy paste, just like read this, okay, like it's just like don't waste, like you're not gonna waste like too much time on that. But I would say that after a year of doing that, now people on Twitter are much less hostile towards Bitcoin than when we got in, when we started doing that content. It wasn't just me; it was a lot of Bitcoiners. What we did is we programmed this bot that would scan through Twitter tweets on Twitter that contain keywords such as why Bitcoin, how Bitcoin, and what is Bitcoin in Arabic, certain keywords. And we would just like watch what people are talking about. And so we would go on these discussions and we would give our input, and other Maximers would join the conversation.
Right.
And all of that, the community started getting bigger and bigger. And I wasn't aware of these people. And most of them are anonymous, by the way. But it's just like they pop up from everywhere. Like, wait, who are you? But you're so smart. Like, you're a Maximus and you speak Arabic and stuff. You weren't with us, but now you're doing the same things that we are doing. They actually started producing content as well. And they started messaging me, saying like, hey, I want to do a tutorial on how to use Sparrow. So I will do it. I will send it to you and you can post it. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like, because the beginning was just me and like maybe 4 people against an entire population of shitcoiners and traders. And now it's like the dominance of the Bitcoin community is starting to really show itself in the Middle East, on Twitter and on social media in general. And I would right now look at the conversations that are happening on this bot, and nobody's talking shit about Bitcoin. Yeah, I was just saying because we've been like just beating this drum that, you know, Bitcoin not blockchain, please guys, Bitcoin not blockchain, because 1, 2, 3, 4, and everybody started understanding this, even if they did not get convinced. They know that if they speak about Bitcoin, if they talk shit about Bitcoin, we're going to reply. And we're not going to, you know, attack you personally, but we are going to reply to your tweet and show you all the arguments where you are wrong. And all of your audience, your followers, they're going to see that you are full of shit. Okay, so, and that really worked miraculously. I think people now expect Bitcoiners much more, Arabic Bitcoiners. They understand Bitcoin. And even though our channel is still very small, less than 1,000 person, but the quality of these of the people that we have is just, man, these are really smart engineers and lawyers and doctors and academics that are right now joining on the mission. Okay, they're actually producing content right now and spreading the message, not just like being like this spectator of like, oh, okay, the Maximus are talking about Bitcoin and attacking others, and the shitcoiners are here, and I'm just gonna sit and watch like how Bitcoiners are replying to them. And no, it's like, let me join. Okay, like everyone is joining, and everyone is excited about building. They're starting to build and to teach other people. It's like, wow, that's amazing. It's like,
Yeah, I've also noticed that being on Twitter, I mean, you're kind of in our own little echo chambers on Twitter, so I guess like sometimes our views can be skewed, but like I've also noticed that like even just, among like Muslims that are into like Islamic finance and Islamic economics and, Islamic banking or whatever, they like now starting to like see this shift where like you have people that are in Islamic finance that are like actually open to Bitcoin now. And they're like talking about things like sound money, inflation, 1971, getting off the gold standard. You're like, oh, okay. Like it seems like a lot of these points are finally like they're penetrating into the conversation. Whereas like before it was like a foregone conclusion that like, a central bank is a part of Islamic economics or something, right? Like I think you're starting to see people that are at least, even if they're not pro Bitcoin, at least they're anti fiat. And at least if I can get you to see like the problems with fiat, as long as you're like not saying incorrect things about Bitcoin, like I'm okay with that. Like at least let's talk about the problem. There's this problem of fiat, and I imagine this is probably a lot more prevalent, among Middle Easterners that live in these countries where there's like hyperinflation going on, like in Lebanon and in other countries, where like they already kind of inherently know that like you don't have to explain to them that their fiat currency sucks. Like they they already know that, and yeah, I want to get your opinion on this last thing. So like, as there are more Arabs that are starting to adopt Bitcoin and getting around to Bitcoin maximalism, do you think that there's going to be more adoption of Bitcoin in these Gulf countries like you mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and these other ones, or do you think that the adoption among Middle Easterners is going to come from other countries like Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon? What's your take on that?
yeah, here the problem. Why aren't we seeing a lot of adoption, for example, in Saudi Arabia? We've seen it in the UAE. They are mining, and they are very welcoming to exchanges and companies. But probably the obstacle when it comes to regulation is, I think they don't want to use, and they've said that they don't want the censorship resistance use case of Bitcoin and the ability to bypass capital controls. That's the most important obstacle when it comes to governments just giving the green light for exchanges and banks to start regulating or just building more and more Bitcoin products. So they are interested in the store of value, property kind of aspect of Bitcoin, sound money. But once you buy Bitcoin, they don't want you to just send it wherever you want or just receive it from whoever you want. That's the problem. Okay. Now, how can you do that? Well, you can do it with multi-sigs and stuff. Maybe if you have, you can do it technically, by the way. Like you can program or write a UTXO script, that only allows maybe a custodian, the signature of a custodian and the signature of the owner to basically send the money. Okay. But then again, it's like that's not Bitcoin really. Okay, that's like weird weird construct. But when it comes to earning Bitcoin, that's a new thing that I'm very hopeful that it's going to spread in all of the Middle East, just everywhere, whether it's in the Gulf states or in these financially vulnerable communities and countries. And earning Bitcoin requires better network, faster network. It requires Lightning Network and custodians and Liquid and these applications like BTC Pay Server, maybe Breeze Wallet and all of this stuff. At the same time, you have stable coins that are also slowing down the adoption of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. And stable coins, I think they are going to be regulated really, especially Tether. I heard that they are holding treasuries, and these treasuries can easily be controlled and blocked from access, I guess, in certain countries. So I guess they're going to try to, just a company, it's a centralized company, so its future is uncertain. But what we need to do as Bitcoiners is just to build the infrastructure. It doesn't matter if people are going to use it or not. They're going to use it eventually, but in emergencies, probably when everyone is following in because of a big green candle, or because their banks are not working, and also USDT and all of that stuff is facing lawsuits. So we just need to build the infrastructure so that when people concede this reality, this fairy tale, not real, this fairy tale reality, and stop all the stablecoin shitcoining and stop all of the hope for fiat to get better, all of these illusions that they have and all of this faith in the status quo, when it disappears, they're gonna find Bitcoin, and the infrastructure needs to be ready. And that's what we're trying to do. We understand that nobody is going to run self-custodial Lightning nodes, but there needs to be people who are running them in case, even Wallet of Satoshi or all of these custodial solutions fail and block Arabs and Middle Easterns. So we just need to keep translating and keep teaching technical people and the Uncle Jims of the Middle East, how to run their nodes. That's our mission. At least that's my mission. I know a lot of people have different approaches. Some people are just teaching Bitcoin, like the sound money aspect of it. You need to save for the future and stuff. And I'm focusing more on the medium of exchange, because I think that the payment networks around the world are gonna get divided more and more. They will cut out the Easterns more and more and censor them.
Yeah, I totally agree with your perspective. I think, the best thing you can do right now is just like educate, and also, like you said, about like building the infrastructure that needs to be built out. And, it's unfortunate that like, a majority of like, if majority of people, but I guess more specifically Middle Easterners, are not really going to get into Bitcoin until, like you said, they see the big green candle. And that's like when, I get a lot of like DMs only whenever you see Bitcoin price rising. And, it's unfortunate how that's probably how it's going to end up happening. But the best we can do is, like you said, educate about Bitcoin and, to build the infrastructure that's needed when people are ready to abandon their fiat crypto stuff and go straight to Bitcoin. So before I close out, can you tell people where to find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, Bassem Al-Asi on LinkedIn, and I have a Substack called Bitcoin Pizza. This is for the English content that I write. I write about how to use Lightning wallets and what's the best hardware wallet you can buy and stuff. So it's just like for beginners who want to explore that technical kind of side or how to use, how to use Bitcoin, how to buy Bitcoin. Kind of like the BTC session of the Arabic world. But I do post a lot of articles in English on Substack, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, Bamski, BAMSKKI, and on Instagram also Bitcoin Turtle. Okay, so I go by a lot of names, and I usually change my Instagram quite often from Bitcoin Shaman to Turtle to Whale Sandwich. So it's really hard to find me, but I'm not gonna change it for maybe 1 month. Okay, so if you're listening, Bitcoin underscore Turtle. After 1 month, it's going to be something else, and you're not gonna find me.
Okay, well, we'll put those links in the description of the podcast episode. So yeah, thank you so much, Bam. I had a lot of fun talking to you. This was really awesome.